New evidence showing that over 4 million people in our country are now living with diabetes. There's, of course, been a huge rise in type 2 diabetes over the last 10, 20 years. As you know, the disease can be very difficult to live with. It can lead to other conditions, such as problems with your eyes and even blindness. Dr. Grant Newton is the CEO at the Centre for Diabetes and Endocrinology. Dr. Newton, good afternoon to you. We know the prevalence rate of diabetes is increasing. It can be very dangerous, can be difficult to manage. Are there now better ways to manage diabetes?
Thank you, Stephen, and really appreciate the time this afternoon. If I may just address your first opening remark with the 4 million. You know, Stephen, one of the scary things we have is that 4 million are potentially known. These are stats that come from the WHO, the International Diabetes Federation, etc. It's the scary thing that we don't know, the time bombs that are sitting amongst our communities that unfortunately says, and in fact, there's some literature which suggests that it's for every one we know, 3 to 5 we don't know. And it's those ones we have to address as well, because as I mentioned, they're ticking time bombs. And to answer your question, Stephen, absolutely. I mean, we're now in a situation where we're moving from what was old legacy ways of dealing with diabetes into new innovation. And, you know, like any war, the most appropriate wars are won based on new technologies. And I think we're experiencing that. Sadly, the wars that we're watching across the globe, the one that we concentrate on is the one around diabetes. And today I'm happy to tell you that there are at least some weapons that we have that can address the scourge of diabetes amongst us.
I mean, most of us who know people living with diabetes, people who live with diabetes or diabetic, they'll have to use needles all the time. They inject themselves. They have to prick their fingers all the time. Sometimes they have to wear something that is quite intrusive. Are there ways around that now?
Absolutely. Stephen, unfortunately, you know, new technologies also cost a little bit more. And so those are the things we're working on. But we come out with a notion that says there's actually no need to bleed. And unfortunately, the cost is, as I say now, stress the prohibitive factor. But the need to bleed can be avoided. And for example, there's, instead of pricking your finger, and think about it carefully, you were speaking about type 2s, but think about the type 1s. Now, remember, type 1 is a genetic disease, right? It's created through bloodlines. And unfortunately, type 1s affects children. And remember that the poor moms and dads often have to wake up their children in the middle of the night and literally have to bleed their children to ascertain whether or not they got high readings of glucose or low readings of glucose. And often during the night, they go into low readings of glucose. And these things can be avoided. And in fact, we're very pleased to let you know that there's new technologies that have come to the country. One that, in fact, the reason I'm wearing a short skirt, I was going to say, but shirt definitely, is that I'm actually wearing one of these new devices. And this, albeit that I'm not thankfully living with diabetes, neither type 1 or type 2, it allows us to be in a position where I can use my phone and on a continuous basis, I can show you, if you can get that onto your screen, I can show you that my blood glucose levels every 2 or 3 minutes is being sent from this device using Bluetooth directly to my phone. So you can imagine now that where people had to literally bleed themselves 2 to 3 times, if not more a day, and certainly insulin-dependent diabetes people have to bleed themselves. They have to understand exactly what their glucose is doing. And once they've ascertained the glucose, then they can, the glucose levels, they can then decide exactly what it is, apportionment of insulin into their bodies. Yet we've not just got to the points around avoiding, unfortunately, the injections of insulin, but the injection pens, which are reasonably painless as we go forward. But at least what we're doing at the moment is to start eradicating the bleeding in order to find out how much insulin so far.
How does it work then? If it's not pricking you, how does the device on your arm work?
Yeah, it's very interesting technology. As I hope you perhaps can see, this little device that's sitting here on me. It works on enzymes, Stephen. So what the little sensor is set up with enzymes inside the sensor. The sensor effectively uses a filament needle that goes to penetrates the subcutaneous level of the skin. And that is continuously sending via Bluetooth, as mentioned, my glucose levels to my phone. So at any one time, and in fact, many of the devices today have the ability to give you alarms. So if your glucose goes below a certain level, or certainly goes above a certain level, then it will give you an alarm. And alarms mean that you need attention, right? It needs attention. Either you're looking at medication attention, like insulin, as we've mentioned, or in some instances, we're talking about someone who might be going into what we call hypos or hypers, or I don't want to get too jargon on you here this afternoon, Stephen, but DKAs, which means that people could end up, their next call is potentially on an ambulance, and ambulance directly to casualty, casualty directly potentially into hospital. So there's these ways, and given that the fact that I can see on my phone as I'm speaking to you right now what my glucose levels are doing, and as I said to you, I'm not diabetic, so therefore I can give you reassurance that I'm not in any one of those, but it can also give me what range I'm in. So the bleeding that's required continuously throughout the year, which is what we call an HbA1c blood test, that effectively looks at your random levels of blood glucose over a period of approximately 3 months retrospectively. Now, what you've got is the ability to look at it on a daily basis and effectively graph your readings, and you can bring that graph to or you can in fact even send those graphs to your clinician, and you can start managing it far more effectively in real time.
Okay.
But as I was saying right at the onset, Stephen, we've got to speak about those that don't know yet that they have diabetes, and those are the ones that we trouble ourselves with. And in fact, you probably noticed this Star Wars-looking machine that I have directly in front of me here. This is another indication of innovation that we brought in. And in fact, this is what we call a retinal camera, which takes photographs of your eyes. And if I was in studio with you right now, Stephen, I would be able to tell you, you wouldn't be able to lie about your age, you wouldn't be able to lie whether you're smoking or not, but I'd also be able to tell you whether you've got hypertension. I'd be able to tell you what your disease levels are around your cholesterol, and certainly and obviously around diabetes. And remember that diabetes causes some major ailments, including things like blindness and amputations, MIs and strokes. Remember, people don't die from diabetes. They die from the tragedy that's associated with diabetes.
And Dr.
we're starting to really... Sorry, Stephen.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know that technology often starts out expensive and then it gets cheaper. At the moment, the sort of little thing on your arm, something like that, how much are we looking at?
We certainly have to say that some schemes, medical schemes, reimburse them. We're in the position now where we can bring it to the market around 1,100 Rand or so a month, which is still quite expensive. But as you rightly said, we're even looking at down the line bringing manufacturing into South Africa, and that absolutely will bring down the cost and give it a more ubiquitous position around the access to the technology.
Dr. Grant Newton, thank you. CEO at the Centre for Diabetes and Endocrinology. Do appreciate the time.